Hello and welcome to this session with several of you who have done short-term scientific missions for the Cost Action Multicomp, Multifunctional Nanocarbon Composite Materials Network. So thank you for coming, thank you for giving up your time, and hope you'll be able to share some of your experiences of SDSMs with the rest of the world. To introduce myself, I'm Phil Ruddock. I'm Vice Chair of this Cost Action. Now, if I can ask you to introduce yourselves. Anna, would you like to start?
Yes, hello. My name is Ana Barra. I'm Portuguese and I'm a PhD student from the University of Aveiro in Portugal.
I'm Aleksandra Ivanoska-Dacikj. I'm a Macedonian. I work as a scientific collaborator at the Macedonian Academy of Sciences and Arts.
Hello, I'm Manuel Franco. I'm Spanish, but I'm a principal researcher in University of Aveiro in Portugal.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dejan, a researcher from Vinča Institute of Nuclear Sciences in Serbia, and I work mostly with carbon nanomaterials, preferably carbon nanotubes and graphene.
Hi, my name is Olena. Okhay. I'm a researcher in University of Aveiro, Portugal.
Thank you very much. Can I move on a bit and ask a little bit about the short-term scientific mission or missions, because I know some of you did more than one that you've done. So if I can ask where you went to, and very briefly, what was the aim of your SDSM? And if you've done more than one, if you could sort of briefly cover all of them, that'd be great. Aleksandra, I'll start with you this time.
Well, I went to Estonia to do my SDSM at the Tallinn University of Technology. So I was working at the Department of Polymer Materials, collaborating with Professor Andres Krume, who was my host. And the aim of the SDSM was to obtain elastic, bioactive, biodegradable electrospun scaffolds based on polyurethane and modified with graphene oxide. And they were intended for tissue engineering application.
Okay, I did two STMs. In 2016, I went to Denmark, to Copenhagen, and I visited a company that was called at the time Quantum Wise. Now they have changed the name. I'm a computer modeler, so I went there to study with computer modelers the conduction of composite systems with graphene and titanium dioxide. Then I did a second one when I went to Trieste, and I was doing modeling with, it's a friend of mine, but I don't remember the name. She's gonna kill me. Silvia, with Silvia Marquesan. And because she was making these systems with peptides and carbon nanomaterials, I was making some models for them. And that's it.
In 2017, I went to Slovenia for about a month and a half. And in Slovenia, I was at the National Institute of Chemistry in Ljubljana with the host Miroslav Huskic. There I performed some experiments with modified graphene and polyaniline. And the second SDSM was in Slovakia in the same year at the Polymer Institute of Slovak Academy of Sciences in Bratislava. There we performed some characterization measurements on XPS, DLS, and SEM.
In 2019, I had 1 month short-time visit to Messina. It was the Institute of Advanced Technology. In laboratory of Professor Francesco Lofrano, we tried to prepare electrodes with reduced graphene oxide and carbon nanotubes for future application for supercapacitors. It was nice work. We already published 2 papers and we think about collaboration in future.
I had 3 SDSMs. The first one was a 3 weeks SDSM in Dublin in the group of Professor Brian Rodriguez, where I had the opportunity to characterize chitosan-based films containing magnetic and electrically conductive particles by AFM, MFM, and CAFM. The second SDSM was in Romania. It was a 2 weeks SDSM in the group of the Professor Mario Zenescu, where I had the opportunity to characterize reduced graphene oxide, reduced by an eco-friendly methodology, by diverse materials characterization techniques. And the last SDSM was a 1 month and a half SDSM in Madrid in the group of Professor Ivanoska-Dacikj, where I developed and characterized carbon nanostructures from natural precursors, namely saprolite clay and liquid caramel.
Brilliant, thank you very much. That's quite an interestingly diverse set of places to have visited and things to have done between you, so that's going to make things very interesting. The next question is, what do you think was the most important thing that you learned during your SDSM? Manuel, should we start with you on this?
Okay, I didn't expect this. What did I learn? Okay, it was the first time I visit a company, because normally, we are in academia and I never been to a company, and it was quite an open company, and it was more similar to the research we do than what I expected. Still, it's a company that makes scientific software, so it's scientific. But that was very, very interesting because they have quite different issues than we do in normal research, and that's my highlight.
Thanks. Moving on.
I have several things to highlight. First of all, I have worked on the equipment that was not available for me at the institute where I work. And in Slovenia, in Ljubljana, I performed some experiments on EasyMax advanced thermostat system that I have never worked on before. And the second one was the opportunity to improve my practical knowledge about some characterization techniques that previously I had little or not experience at all.
Thank you.
In my case, I need to say that before this visit, I didn't know about electrochemical measurements. So for me, it was some initiate new area. Moreover, this laboratory people work already with company, and they explain me few details that I never know from theory part. So for me, it was nice, and now I know more and I know what direction I need to think.
The most important thing that I learned was different ways of working, different ways of doing the same thing by different laboratories.
Well, for me, this SDSM happened at the time when I was at the end of my PhD studies. So I was looking for a new topic to work on, which will be a continuation of my work on elastomeric nanocomposites, but will go a step further. So this SDSM at the Tallinn University was a great opportunity to learn a new technique of obtainment of fibrous and porous polymer materials. This technique was electrospinning. I had no previous experience, so this was the most important thing for me, learning a new technique, get some practical experience, and it also showed to have a great potential for my further scientific research.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much. The next question might sort of cover a little bit of what you've just said, because you've taken sort of different approaches to this question. So you don't have to repeat yourself if you've already sort of said the most of it. But the question really is, firstly, did you enjoy it? And the second question is, how important was or is it to you? And that second part, I think some of you have answered somewhat and some of you less so. Dejan.
Yes, I enjoyed it very much. SDSM actually contributed to my career development because we established some scientific cooperation with researchers from Slovenia, and later we had the bilateral project, and I was the leader of the Serbian research team. And this fact actually helped me to make a progress in my career. And about the second SDSM, we made some good results in Slovakia. Therefore, we were able to complete research on electrochemically exfoliated graphene and gold nanoparticles, and we published a paper about it.
Thank you.
Yes, SDSM is good for researcher because is this next step for research for scientific layer and also for career. So we need it.
Thank you.
I enjoyed all the SDSMs I had. I enjoyed them a lot. Mostly the opportunity to know different people, different ways of working, and different cultures as well.
Did I enjoy it? This happened during the winter, and I was in Tallinn, which is 2,500 kilometers north of my hometown. So it was cold and dark, and I had only 10 days to first to optimize the process parameters of a technique with which I wasn't familiar with, and then produce the plant samples. But at the end, it was a successfully finished job. So yeah, I can say I enjoyed it.
Okay, I enjoyed both of them in a different way, but I never been to Denmark before. It was very nice. As I said before, working in a company or staying in a company was very interesting. In fact, they developed a software that we didn't use before, and we are still using today after 5 years. And so it was very good for us. And when I went to Trieste, I known Silvia Marquesan maybe for the last 20 years. But we never worked together before. It was very good and very interesting experience, and we got already 2 papers out of it, and it was very nice. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So moving on to what's the links that you developed. I know some of you have said that you knew the people you were going to beforehand, some of you not so much. So the question really is, have you been able to develop the links with the people in your host organization since the SDSM? And it'd be useful if you can give an example of what that's led to. Olena?
At the moment, we wanted to do it, but we tried to apply for 2 calls, but in each of them, one of country, Portugal or Italy, was not included. So we think about future.
Thanks.
In my case, I developed links with people from all the SDSMs.
Yeah, I can also say the collaborations continue. So because we successfully prepared the plant samples, then in vivo studies followed, and at the end we published a joint article, and the collaboration is going on.
Yeah, for me it's the same, and I still in touch with both groups of people. And although we are not actively collaborating right now, it's probable that we will do it in the near future.
I've already mentioned the 2-year bilateral project with the National Institute of Chemistry in Ljubljana in Slovenia in 2018 and 19. And in this project, the leaders of both research teams participated in the same Multicomp cost action.
Excellent, thanks very much. To what extent has COVID-19 had an effect on the collaborations and the links that you developed? Anna?
So the COVID-19 turned the presential conferences impossible to do. So it reduced the opportunities to establish new collaborations.
I can say the same. So the travel restrictions really had a strong effect on collaborations, and especially going on research stays. So I had to cancel one SDSM that was supposed to take place last March, but then the borders closed. So since then I haven't been on a research stay abroad.
Okay, for me, it's interesting because I'm a computational scientist. So I have to work more than I did before COVID, because basically most of my experimental collaborators are writing papers and I have to provide it with models. So it's been a really hectic year, and it doesn't, it affects me that I cannot go to conferences, but then more people want calculations. So it's a strange balance.
Well, it has affected all aspects of life, including research and science in general. And there was and still is a big delay in plans caused by the lockdown, and a lot of work has to be rescheduled. And of course, all the travel restrictions and everything has a huge impact on cost actions, on conferences, meetings, postdoctoral research, and everything.
Okay, in my case, I'm not theoretic, I'm practic, and I need experiments, so I need laboratory, I need measurements. In case collaboration with people who I already know, I can send message and I can make collaboration. I can write paper, but I cannot meet new people. So it's very bad situation.
So moving on from that, Olena's mentioned the lab aspects. Have you been able to get into your lab at all over the last year, Olena?
I will say that in Portugal we have 2 periods of quarantine when we cannot enter the laboratory. So at least I have one additional aspect. I have children and I need to stay at home with them. So during the last year, I was absent in laboratory probably 90% of time. So I can write only paper based on my previous experience or write to review or something like that.
Has that been the same for the others of you, Anna?
Yes, it's the same. So my lab work was very restricted due to the lockdown, and now due to the work in shifts. So I have my PhD work delayed.
I have the same experience. So the quarantine, the curfew, I was twice in self-isolation. So of course, lab work suffered.
Okay, for me, as I said, I work with computers, so I can work completely remotely. I mean, there is some technical difference sometimes with the graphical interface and being actually there, but it's I can do most things I normally do. All my computational experiments, if you want, can be perfectly done remotely.
In Serbia here, for last year, we had lockdown for almost 3 months, and we were sent to work from home. And although you can perform some tasks at home, your work depends on the laboratory. And even after the lockdown, when we went back to work, there were certain restrictions, and that prevented full cooperation between institutions here.
Wow, that's an interesting roundup. Manuel, you certainly have a different experience.
Yes.
Do you think you've learnt more through the year because you've been busier?
That's an interesting thing. I learned that most scientists are really juggling priorities. So now that they cannot go to the lab, making papers is a big priority, and you can see it. I mean, I realized that there are many more people submitting papers, and you can feel the shift if you understand what I mean. But it's I do understand that for my experimentalist colleagues it's very bad. And for me and for the world, COVID-19 is bad, but this is the year of my career I publish more papers because everybody wants papers done and they cannot do experiments. So they are finishing stuff that was staying there for months or years. So it's, I guess everything has a positive or a negative side, even such a negative thing as COVID-19.
Yes. I think a lot of the difficulty is that for some people there's positive and for other people it's much more negative.
Yes.
But I think we have to make what advantage we can of the positives.
Yeah, there is no much choice. We have to wait and see.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a positive way.
Yeah.
And try to
Moving
keep
on
positive.
with that, to what extent do you think the online conferencing facilities, such as Zoom or Teams or whatever, have replaced the face-to-face conference over this past year? Aleksandra, what do you think?
Well, definitely they are useful too. So in this situation, it was good having this kind of tools and not stop the communications. But for me, especially for meetings with a big number of participants or conferences, when you just see the initials of the participants, you can't see their reactions. So this is not a good replace for a face-to-face meeting for me.
Yeah, I agree with Aleksandra. It's, I mean, I've been in conferences talking and watching people, and it's not the same thing, and it's a replacement. It's what you can do, but it's much worse than being there at all levels. Yes.
I also agree. It cannot fully replace real meetings, but certainly it comes in handy in these situations, and they are the best alternative to a real meeting.
I can say that during the last year, I didn't participate in online conference. From my opinion, it cannot replace face-to-face communication. In case I want to listen something, some new lecture, I can find online events when I can listen topics that I really want. But for communication, no, it's not possible to replace.
They are a good alternative and a good working tool. However, they cannot replace the face-to-face meetings.
I think that they will have some impact on helping people who find it more difficult to get to conferences, to get involved. I'm thinking of people who, well, maybe parents with small children at home, carers, those with physical difficulties, and actually people who live a long way away. And if you live in the, I don't know, the heart of Africa, and there aren't conferences that you can easily get to, maybe it might help some people. Any thoughts on that? Random thoughts from anyone?
Yes, we have a small baby. He's gonna be 2 next month, and I have to say that I wouldn't be able to travel anyway. So it's although I think these are not good replacements of conference, I think that hybrid conferences are the way to go, because it would allow people like me with the small babies, or as you say, from remote areas, or or without the conditions to go there, because it costs money to go somewhere, especially if it's far. So I think they are here to stay, and probably most events are gonna be hybrid, in my opinion, in the future.
You've moved beautifully onto my next question, so I'll integrate any other thoughts with the next question, which is, do you think that COVID will have affected the way that we are going to work into the future? So I think Manuel has led us on beautifully on that one. Dejan, you like to?
Well, in certain ways, of course, but I don't think that it will fully, like Zoom conferences and everything, will fully replace the face-to-face meetings and let's say traditional conferences as it was before.
I think to have high number of participants, like usually conference has something like 200, 300, 400 participants, it's not possible to obtain for online conference. But small events, something like work in teams, in Zooms for 10, 20, it's possible, and it will work properly.
I agree with Manuel. I think the hybrid conferences are the way to go.
Yeah, I also agree that this is a good tool for small number of participants, but for big ones, I think the face-to-face cannot be replaced with online facilities.
Yeah, also on the good side, this is making a change because the scientific community, we are very conservative. So I think it opens the exploration for more possibilities, and let's see what the future brings.
Moving on to the last question. What would your advice be to future researchers who might face a similar pandemic in, say, 10 or 15 years' time? Any thoughts on that, Anna?
So my advice would be to stay as calm as possible and use the lockdown time for reading, writing, and planning experiments, which can save time.
Yeah, I also can say adapt to the situation. It's also useful to find co-workers in your country. Keep in touch with co-workers abroad. Enjoy the time spent with your family and think positive because this got to end sometime.
Okay, I'm gonna be political sorry about this, but I think we should convince. It's clear now what effect the investment in science has. We wouldn't have a vaccine otherwise, not so fast, and we really need to help the general population to understand, physical science and to be critical about the information. There are a number of things. I know this is not what you ask, but I think if we can talk with people in the future is be prepared, be smart, be critical, and try to be positive because anything could happen. So don't take everything for granted because things can change one day from another. And then you have to wait and see as we are doing now.
Well, my advice is to be prepared. Now, this might seem a bit pessimistic, but there are warnings that something similar might happen sooner or later. So people should be flexible, ready to adapt to any new circumstance, and that's it.
I can just say about one example that we apply for work in Belgium and receive answers that your CV is okay, but because of COVID, we prefer to take one member from our internal group. So at this moment, it's not possible to think about moving for some country. So now we need relax and think about our life in our university and use online facility.
Moving on from that, sort of developing that a little bit, has anyone else experienced any difficulties in finding work or know of people who are finding it difficult to find work because of COVID? No, they're hiding, obviously. All that. Yes, I think it is an experience, particularly for those who've just finished a PhD, perhaps, and are looking for a post. So I said it does seem to be a fairly general experience. Thank you all very much. We've covered a fair amount of ground, and thank you for your help in covering that ground.